Hello everyone, and welcome to my Wrath of the Lich King class picking guide. In this guide I'm gonna go through all the different classes and talk about the advantages and how come I find them enjoyable to play. I've decided to abandon my current classic character and instead play on one of the upcoming first servers. Choosing the right character from the start could have an impact on your overall progression. That's why I'll also be talking about the benefits of choosing a specific class as your first character. Anyway, enjoy this video. The first class in this guide is the Paladin, and a Paladin is fighting in melee combat but also has access to different heals. They can also provide different buffs to themselves or their party members. One of the biggest benefits is that you can play as healer, tank and DPS, so 3 different specializations as one class. There are also amazing solo levelers and gold farmers, and on top of this they also get cheaper ground mounts, so the level 20 and 40 mount. This is definitely a big benefit on the upcoming first servers, so when you get cheaper mounts but you're also an amazing gold farmer, then it will be easier for you to get your epic flying skill, but also different epic items when you reach level 80. Like I mentioned earlier, a Paladin can play as healer, tank and DPS. This is one of the main reasons for why I will main a Paladin on the first servers, so I don't need to spend a lot of time leveling a character to level 80 to start tanking, and if I all of a sudden would like to heal, then I need to level a new character. Usually when I level as a low level Paladin, I play as Retribution with a 2-hand weapon. As a Retribution Paladin, you have access to a seal that will hit 2 targets at the same time. This is so important in the beginning because the other talent trees at this level will not have access to any cleave damage. However, when I reach level 40, I always go back to my class trainer to unlearn my talents. And instead of playing Retribution, I'll now swap to Protection. The reason for this is because at level 40, the Protection Paladin can pull a lot of monsters and do AoE damage at the same time. I'm not saying you cannot continue to level as a Retribution Paladin, they're honestly fairly decent levelers, but overall Protection is just way better for me. I can pull so many monsters, finish the quest faster, and gain more experience compared to when I play as a Retribution Paladin. At the same time, the Protection Paladin is also the specialization you need to master if you wish to grind a lot of gold. This can be so useful for when you reach level 70 in the pre-patch or even level 80 in Wrath of the Lich King. I need to admit one thing though, a Retribution Paladin becomes so fun to play when you reach level 60 or higher. At this level, they start to do insane cleave damage, so even if a Protection Paladin can pull 8 to 10 targets at a time, then a Retribution Paladin can pull 3 to 4 targets but kill them so fast compared to a Protection Paladin. So if this sounds interesting but also looks fun to play, then the Paladin might be the right choice for you. The next class in this guide is going to be the Warrior, another melee class that will fight with either 1-hand or 2-hand weapons. In fact, a Warrior will eventually be able to equip 2 2-hand weapons at the same time, and this is the only class that has this opportunity. In the beginning of Wrath of the Lich King, a level 80 warrior will not do that great damage. But as you progress through the expansion and get better and better gear, the warrior will all of a sudden become one of the best damage dealers in the game. In the beginning, the leveling speed isn't that great, but the moment you reach around level 30, this will change, and a warrior will all of a sudden become one of the easiest but also fastest levelers to reach level 80. But you also have a huge impact on your own leveling speed between level 1 to 30. Because if you decide to level with 2 1-hand weapons, it will be a huge mistake. When you equip 2 1-hand weapons, you will increase your chance to miss by a lot. This will slow you down, and if you equip a 2-hand weapon, you will not have as much chance to miss. So leveling from 1 to 30, it's simply better to level with a 2-hand weapon compared to 2 1-hand weapons. However, as I reach level 30 and 40, I feel like arms is just becoming worse and worse. For this particular reason, I usually unlearn my talents and swap into a Protection Warrior. As a Protection Warrior, you have amazing survivability, cleave and AoE damage, and you can easily take down 4 targets at the same time. One of the main reasons for why a Protection Warrior is such a fast leveler is because you don't really depend that much on your gear, and most of your spells will do high damage no matter what weapon or items you equip. At the same time, you also have improved Revenge. This will increase your damage of your Revenge by 60%, and it will also cleave a nearby target. When you reach level 60, you can unlock Titan's Grip at the bottom of the Fury talent tree. This allows the warrior to use 2 2-hand weapons at the same time, but usually I just stick to protection because I feel like you're leveling faster with that specialization. Sometimes I also feel like there's a lot of downtime as an arms or fairy warrior where you either need to regen health with first aid or food. Here's a quick tip to reduce your downtime. Remember to use Blood Rage and then your bandage. When you do this combo, you will ensure that you stay in combat, not losing any rage when you're healing yourself. So what is the benefits of choosing a warrior? Well, first of all, you will be an overall fast leveler and reach level 80 in not that long. You can also raid as arms, fairy, and protection, so all three specializations will work. And as a protection warrior, it's easy to find a dungeon group, and therefore also easy to collect gear for all the different specializations. So this is it for the warrior. Next up will be an amazing spellcaster, also known as the Mage. But what is a Mage, and why should you choose this class? Well, a Mage can put out a lot of damage in next to no time. They are one of the fastest classes to level in the game, at least if you master how to kite and AoE at the same time. They also provide a lot of good things to a party or raid group, for example food and water, different buffs, and also amazing crowd control. And when you combine these things together with a high damage output, then you have a class that is wanted by a lot of people and usually get an instant invite into dungeon or raid groups. As a mage, you have 3 different specializations you can choose: Arcane, Fire, and Frost. And in my opinion, Frost is the best solo leveling spec you can use. The reason for this is because you have high damage output, but you also slow the targets by a lot, making you able to kill them even before they reach you, and if they get close to you, you can easily kite them around with other slow effects. In this clip, I'm able to kill the targets just fine, and I've only equipped 1 item. If this was a warrior or another melee class, I would depend a lot on my gear, for example getting a better weapon. But as a mage, you don't really depend that much on your gear, you just need to make sure you learn the different spells at the trainers. Like I mentioned earlier, I feel like Frost Mage is the easiest way to level your class. High utility, mobility, and also accessibility to different spells that allow you to slow the targets so you can kite them forever, and even take down elite monsters at the same time. As a Frost Mage, most of your spells doesn't require that much mana, so even when you're low on mana, you can still take down an opponent. And the good thing about leveling as Frost from level 10 and all the way up to 80 is that when you reach level 80, you can still use the specialization to do dungeons and raids. In my opinion, a mage is so fun to play, and throughout level 1 to 80, you will get so many new spells. So whenever you level up your character, you might get a new spell that you find enjoyable to use. However, there's a downside of playing this class. You're forced to DPS, because all your 3 specializations is focusing on doing damage with spells. So if you wish to all of a sudden tank or heal, then you need to level another character. If you already feel like this could be a problem in the future, then the mage is probably not the right choice for you, and instead you could play a druid. But what is a druid? Well, it's pretty much everything. It's a tank, healer, and DPS. And when you decide to play as DPS, you can do this as a melee, but also spellcaster. In other words, it's also the whole package in one class. The Druid is also the only class that has access to different shapeshifting forms, and even an instant flight form, so you don't need to spend cast time to summon your flying mount. For this particular reason, the Druid is also the best gold farmer when you need to do mining and herbalism at the same time, simply because of the instant flight form. The main reason why I would recommend a Druid is simply because it's entertaining to play when you're leveling, but also at max level, and you never get bored of this class. If you don't want to DPS any longer, yeah, you could simply just swap to healer or tank. When it comes to leveling your Druid, it's also fastest to level as a feral Druid, and later on, balance also becomes quite viable. But in the beginning, I recommend you to level as feral. You have way more damage, and you don't need to spend time casting different spells. You simply just go into melee and kill the targets. I'm not saying you cannot level as a balanced Druid or resto Druid, but if you wish to level as these specializations at low level, then you also gotta realize that you're one of the slowest levelers of all the different classes in the game. You can always increase your leveling speed as a healer by grouping up with other people, so you heal them and they do the damage. By the time that you reach level 60, balanced Druids also becomes insane levelers. The reason for this is because you get a new spell, which is Starfall. A spell that does a lot of AoE damage, and this you can combine together with casting Moonfire at the same time. As you see in this clip, the balanced Druid is all of a sudden such a decent leveler and this is a fun way to level from 60 to 80. So if you wish to play a class that is a decent leveler, but who can take care of every single role in the game, being a tank, healer, and DPS, but also an amazing gold farmer, then the Druid might be the choice for you. The next class in this guide is going to be the new hero class in Wrath of the Lich King, the Death Knight. As a Death Knight, you can play as either DPS or tank, and when you're tanking, you're using a two-hand weapon and not a shield, like a warrior or paladin. This class is also the only one that can tank and heal at the same time. So you use your spell Death Strike to attack the enemy, but also heal you for a high amount. And as a warrior and druid tank, you will charge the enemies. Instead, as a Death Knight, you will be pulling them towards you with Death Grip. Another big benefit of choosing a Death Knight is the amount of damage you can do to different targets at the same time. So when you add your diseases to one target, you can spread it to all the nearby targets. This allows the player to kill a lot of enemies at the same time, making the Death Knight a fast leveler. And another big benefit of choosing this class is that it starts at level 55. However, if you play on the upcoming first Wrath of the Lich King servers, you'll need to level another character to 55 before you can create a Death Knight. Because of all the different diseases and that you can spread these to different targets, a Death Knight is also an amazing gold farmer. Especially in lower level dungeons where you just pull a lot of enemies, spread the diseases, and if you're low on health, you can just restore this with Death Strike. The biggest downside of choosing this class is definitely that it's new in Wrath of the Lich King. So because of this, I also expect a lot of people to choose to level a Death Knight. If this is going to be the case, then it might also be a bit difficult for you to find a dungeon or raid group, simply because there's probably already quite a few Death Knights in the party. But don't worry, it's not like it's going to be impossible to find a dungeon or raid group. In fact, a lot of people would like to bring this class into their group. So if you wish to play a character that does a lot of damage, who can play as tank and DPS, and even grind a lot of gold and level extremely fast, then the Death Knight might be the right choice for you. Next up is the Warlock. And a Warlock is a caster that does single target and AoE damage. And even as a new player, this is one of the easiest classes to level from level 1 to 80. One of the main reasons for them being such a good solo leveler is that they can fear the targets so they will not reach you. A Warlock can also summon different pets, for example the Voidwalker, and this will function as a tank and taunt the different enemies. A Warlock can also summon a Fell Hunter, and a Fell Hunter can silence enemies that is about to cast. It also provides a buff to the party members. This will increase their intellect and spirit. Another pet that also provides a buff is the Imp. This will increase the party members' total health. There's definitely some benefits of choosing a Warlock on the upcoming first servers. For example, cheaper mounts. So at level 20 you need to pay less than 50 silver to learn your mount, and at level 40 it's also a bit cheaper. But you need to know one thing. The Epic Riding mount requires you to purchase the Epic Riding skill before you can learn this at the trainer. One thing I like about the Warlock as well is that you can create a Soul Stone. This is an item you can use on either yourself or any party members. With a Soul Stone you can die and then you can use this to revive. So as you see right here, instead of releasing spirit, I use the Soul Stone and I can get back on my mount. There's also a new feature in Wrath of the Lich King that allowed the Warlock to summon a Summoning Stone. So you and other players can click on this to summon the party and raid members. And even when the Warlock is not nearby, other players can click on the object to summon the remaining party members. So is the Warlock a good choice as a main character in Wrath of the Lich King? It definitely is. It's easy to level even if it's the first time you try the class. And by the time that you reach level 80, you will also have an easy time getting into different dungeon, heroic and raid groups. Simply because you do high damage, but you also provide so many different benefits. Health stones, soul stones, and even a summoning stone. If a Warlock doesn't sound that tempting to you, then a Hunter might be a better choice. A Hunter is a ranged DPS just like the Warlock, but instead of being a caster, they will use guns and bows. They can also use different pets when they're leveling and at max level, but you need to tame these in the open world. And as a Beastmaster, you can even tame exotic pets, just like this one from Shadowmoon Valley. In my opinion, the Hunter is probably the easiest class to level in this game. The main reason for this is because you send in your pet and it does so much damage as a Beastmaster Hunter. So your pet will tank the targets, you can just stand still and shoot at them at the same time, making this an easy but also such a chill way to level a character. And trust me, a hunter will kill targets rather fast, so they're not a slow leveler. In fact, they're one of the fastest levelers in the game. Because of this, a hunter is such a popular class, and this can make it more difficult for you to get a raid spot when you reach level 80. Even though it's easy to level a hunter, it requires a lot of skills to use all the different spells a hunter has. And a good hunter compared to a bad hunter is a big difference, especially if you like to PvP. Some of the benefits of leveling a hunter is that you have freezing trap. This will be useful if you accidentally pull something, but also when you start doing dungeons and raids, because the trap will work like a CC and prevent the target from doing anything. You have probably tried this many times as any of the other classes. You accidentally pull something and end up dying. But as a hunter, you don't really have to care that much about pulling something, because you can always use feign death to pretend that you're dead, and right after you can mount up and go on. So who should choose to level a hunter? Probably those of you who would like to have a chill leveling experience, and also those of you who accidentally pull a lot of monsters when you're leveling. Anyway, jokes aside, a hunter will do decent damage when you reach level 80, and it will be like this throughout all of the expansion. So you're not leveling a DPS class that you all of a sudden need to abandon because you're not getting invited anymore. So that's about it for the hunter. If you haven't managed to find the right class yet, then don't worry, we still have 3 more classes to cover. The next class is the Rogue, a melee fighting character that can turn invisible to surprise its enemies. A rogue is using 2 one-hand weapons at the same time. This can either be a dagger, mace, sword, axe, or fist weapon. And they have explosive damage, so all of a sudden they might pop their cooldowns, stun the enemies, and kill it in next to no time. But what about the overall experience as a rogue? Is it fun to play? Is it fast to level from 1 to 80? When you reach max level, is there a high chance of getting a raid spot? And what is the benefits of choosing this class on the upcoming fresh servers? All of this I'll explain right now. So when you're leveling your rogue, you have 3 different specializations to choose: assassination, subtlety, and combat. Whenever I'm leveling a new rogue, I always choose to level as combat. The main reason for this is because you get increased damage with your weapons, and one of your main abilities, Slice and Dice, has increased duration as a combat rogue. At the same time as you progress through the levels, so at around level 30, you will unlock Blade Flurry, a cooldown that allows the rogue to hit an additional nearby target. So when you use Blade Flurry, a rogue can easily take down 2 targets at the same time. This is not going to be possible if you decide to level as a subtlety rogue or assassination. In fact, they will only get stronger and slowly be able to kill more and more enemies at the same time. I'm not saying that you cannot level as the 2 other specializations, but you gotta realize that if you level as combat, you will also reach level 80 a lot faster. The overall leveling speed as a rogue is decent. They're not fast and they're not slow. But there is a big benefit of choosing a rogue. You have your stealth ability, allowing you to easily pass different enemies. You can zap them and loot a quest item. And you can even blind a target as well to loot the quest item. And if you pull too many monsters, you can always avoid death by vanishing. This kind of playstyle is what makes the rogue so fun to play, and also a unique experience compared to any of the other classes. Mainly because of stealth, a rogue is also an amazing gold farmer. You can easily skip a lot of monsters, go into different dungeons and other locations to loot chests, herbs, and even mine. But what will happen when you reach level 80? Will a rogue still have a raid spot and even be invited into dungeons and heroics? They definitely will, and at max level you can now also swap to assassination if you wish to do PvE content, because this specialization will do just fine, just like combat will. If you wish to PvP, I feel like subtlety is the best. You have way more survivability, utility, and control. So now is the big question: should you main a rogue in Wrath of the Lich King? To summarize everything, they are decent levelers, they have access to amazing gold farms, people like to bring them into raids and dungeons because of the CC and decent damage. You can easily kill other players in PvP, and you can avoid dying by using your Vanish. At the same time, the damage of a rogue in PvE will also be decent throughout all of the expansion. So if this sounds tempting to you, then the rogue might also be the right choice for you. A Shaman can play as 3 different specializations, 2 of these being specialized into doing damage and the other one being a healer. But like I mentioned, you can play as 2 different DPS. The first one is going to be Enhancement, a melee fighting character that will use spells, but also fight and do damage with their melee weapons. The other damaging specialization is not focusing on doing damage with melee weapons. Instead, they are being a spellcaster that will do a high amount of damage with range attacks. In my opinion, this is also one of the biggest benefits of this class. For example, if you chose to level a rogue or a warlock, you either were forced to play as a ranged DPS or melee, but that's not the same case with a shaman. And don't forget, you can always swap to healer if you don't want to DPS any longer. A big benefit of choosing a shaman in Wrath of the Lich King is that this class now also got access to a CC. The name of the new spell is Hex, and this you can cast on a target to turn it into a frog. The duration of this CC is 30 seconds, and the target will not regen 100% health when they're hexed. Next up is the specialization I prefer to use when I'm leveling a fresh shaman. I honestly don't like to level as a restoration or elemental shaman. You simply spend too much time casting the different spells and also spend a lot of time where you need to regen your mana. Instead, I recommend you to level as enhancement, at least at low level. The reason for this is because you don't have to cast, you simply just go into melee range and you do a high amount of damage. And as you get to level 30 and 40, the damage of your shaman just becomes even better compared to elemental. Another thing I like about the enhancement tree is that your Ghost Wolf is instant. So if you accidentally pull a target, or if you're about to die, then you can use Ghost Wolf instantly and run away. Like I mentioned, the enhancement shaman will become better as your level increases. At level 30, you unlock Windfairy Weapon, an enchant on your weapon that has a chance to proc additional attacks. This will make the shaman all of a sudden do a high amount of burst damage. And if you play as Elemental Shaman, you will not really benefit from this weapon enchant because you're fighting as a spellcaster. By the time that you reach level 40, you can now learn how to dual wield, so use two one-hand weapons at the same time. So now the Shaman has an even higher chance to proc Windfairy weapons. And at the same time at level 50, they will get Shamanistic Rage, a spell you can use every 1 minute to gain a lot of mana. And at level 60, they also unlock their Spirit Wolves. These pets will do damage, but also restore a high amount of health. And when you combine this with Shamanistic Rage, you have a leveler that never has any downtime where they either need to heal or regen mana. And like this wasn't enough, the Enhancement Shaman also have the talent Maelstrom Weapon. Whenever they do damage, they have a chance to get some different stacks, and when you get 5 of these stacks, your next heal will also be instant. So if you wish to play a class that is a slow leveler in the beginning, but eventually turning out to be one of the fastest ones between level 60 to 80, and a fairly unique class that beside the druids has access to being a spellcaster, melee DPS, and healer at the same time. So if this sounds interesting, then the shaman might be the right choice for you. Else I have one more class to cover, and that is the priest. This is a caster who has access to a DPS, but also 2 different healing specializations. Besides being a great healer and DPS, then it's also a ton of fun to play, and one of the benefits of choosing this class is that it's needed in all the different raids, simply because a priest provides so many different buffs. What these will do is to increase your party member's stamina, spirit, and even shadow resistance. And you also have a buff that makes the target immune to the next fear. This is also known as Fear Ward. And all these different buffs is the main reason why it's mandatory to bring a priest into a raid group. Like it wasn't enough, a priest also gets 2 other spells that will benefit the party or raid members. First off being Divine Hymn, a spell you can channel to heal up to 3 party members for a high amount of healing. And Hymn of Hope, another spell you can channel to restore a lot of mana for up to 3 of your party members. And for those of you wondering if this will also affect the raid members, yes, like the tooltip says, it's also gonna restore health and mana to the party or raid members. Finally, the priest can also start to do AoE damage with the new spell in Wrath of the Lich King, Mindseer. Back in Burning Crusade, they were struggling a lot because they only had single target damaging spells. But how does it feel like to play a priest at max level? I can tell you, it feels damn good. If you play the DPS specialization, in other words the Shadow Priest, you add damage over time to the targets and you can just kite around. On top of this, you also have different spells where you need to stand still to cast them, and these will do a high amount of damage. Another big benefit of playing a Shadow Priest is that some of the damage that you do will also be converted into healing that will heal you and your party and raid members. So pay attention to my health bar to see how much healing I honestly do. and this is a big reason for why a Shadow Priest is needed in a raid. You do a ton of healing, but at the same time also amazing DPS. It's not like the 2 healing specializations cannot do any damage. I mean, you can level just fine as these specializations, but they're just meant for something else, and that is to keep a player alive. This can be done by casting a shield that prevents damage, a heal over time, and different AoE and single target heals. Overall, it's a lot of fun to play a priest at max level. You have so many different spells to use, and even though you have 2 different healing specializations, then the playstyle is completely different. If you plan to level a priest, then I would recommend you to level a Shadow. They have way more damage, but also more damaging abilities, and at the same time they regen more mana during and after combat, making them have less downtime compared to the 2 other specializations. If you would like to heal and DPS at the same time, then Discipline is the right choice for you. They level slower compared to the Shadow Priest, but the benefit is that they can always head into a dungeon and be a healer or DPS. So should you play a priest in Wrath of the Lich King? Well, if you wish to play a class that is mandatory to bring into a raid, so in other words a class that has a higher chance to get invited into a raid group, but also one that is extremely fun to play at max level and who reminds me of combining different classes together, for example the heal over time as a Resto Druid, the shields from a Paladin, and the damage over time as a Warlock. So if this sounds appealing to you, then the priest might also be the right choice. But yeah, this is also about the end of the video. If you wish to see more Wrath of the Lich King content in the future, make sure to subscribe and get notified whenever I post these. On my channel you can also find a ton of other guides specifically made for this upcoming expansion. But yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching and have an amazing day. Peace.